So, welcome back to grade 8 math. We are looking at percents, and we are on the second page of our lesson on 2.6, which is percents. And we're just going to do a little bit of review from grade 7, just so that we can get used to how to work with percents again. So if we look at the first question, it says 17% of 340. Remember, whenever we're given a percent, we can always opt to change it into two forms. We can either change it into fraction form. So 17% means 17 over 100, or 17 out of 100. The other option is to change it into a decimal. 17% is the same thing as 0.17. We looked at that at the last lesson. Now, of means multiplication, and then of 340. Well, 340 represents the full amount. So we're looking at 17% of that full amount. And so if you remember, P over 100 equals part over whole. So P over 100 equals part over whole. This is almost our magic formula for the entire lesson. Is this P over 100 equals part over whole, where the whole amount in this case is 340, and we don't know the part. So we'll just use X for part for now. In order to solve this, we can either use cross multiplication, or we can use scale factors in order to solve this problem. If we use cross multiplication, X equal to, and I draw my little fish, equals to 340 times 17 divided by 100, and I find that X is equal to 57.8. The other way that we could do this is by using the word of. 17% is the same thing as 0.17. Of means multiply, and then of 340. So 0.17 times 340, because this is the same thing as 17%, of 340 equals 57.8. So the same answer. If we look at the next one, we see what percent of 45 is 9. That means what percent, that's P over 100. We don't know that percentage. And then we have to figure out which one is the part, which one's the whole. Well, of 45 means that 45 was the whole amount and 9 is the part. If we solve this using cross multiplication, we find P is equal to 20%. And if you want to stop the video so that you can work on letter C, you'll find out that the whole, which is this W, is equal to 40. Again, whenever you solve these problems, take a look to see whether or not this answer makes sense. Does it make sense that 24% of 40 is 9.6? Well, 24% is approximately a quarter, because that's 25%. So is a quarter of 40 about 9.6? Well, a quarter of 40 is 10. It's 1/4 of 40 is 10. And because it's a little bit less than 25%, it's a little bit less than a quarter, then we expect the answer to be a little bit less than 10. So we know that 40 would have been the right answer. That could have made sense without even using any calculations. Let's do an example, and you can press pause also once you read the example. Try it in your notebooks first and see what you get. There are 800 students enrolled at Susan's school last year. The enrollment went up 3.5% this year. The new enrollment is 150% of the enrollment 10 years ago. A, find the new enrollment this year. B, find the enrollment 10 years ago. Well, whenever we're given a word problem, there's a couple of strategies that we can do to figure out this problem. The first one is to reread and try to pick out any information that we know, that we don't know, that we want to know. Also, is by rearranging the information, by rewriting it in a different way. So I'll use a little bit of a graphic to see what it is this year. So this year is 2012. And then we talk about the enrollment 10 years ago. Well, the enrollment 10 years ago would have been in 2002. And then they talk about last year, so 2011. So I have 3 different dates here. And now I can start plugging in numbers in terms of what I know. So if I look at the beginning, there were 800 students enrolled last year. So of all of these 3 numbers, the enrollment that I do know enrolled is the last year's number, which is 2011, and there are 800 students. The enrollment went up 3.5% this year. That means that from 2011 to 2012, I went up by 3.5%. The new enrollment is 150% of the enrollment 10 years ago. So from 10 years ago till today, the enrollment went up by 150%. So the questions are find the new enrollment this year and find the enrollment 10 years ago. Well, let's start with this year. First of all, we can compare this year's to last year's because of this 3.5%. So all I need to do is to find what is 3.5% of 800 and then add that to the 800 to find out what is the current enrollment. So 3.5% is the same thing as 3.5 over 100. And now I'm going to compare that to a total of 800. Now I can use, and I'll leave that as n. That means my new amount, or my today's amount, I can either use scale factors, so times 8 on the top and on the bottom, or I can use cross multiplication. And so then I find out my unknown n, my enrollment this year, is will be 28 students, or 28 students. Does that mean only 28 students are enrolled this year? No, this represents the 3.5 increase. So my actual total for 2012 equal to the 800 students originally from 2011 plus the 28 students that I'm adding this year makes 828 students. If I look at question B, find the enrollment 10 years ago, well, what I want to do is try to set up a proportion again. Now, I'm comparing this year's to 2002, which is an increase of 150% of that amount. That means my new is 150%. The 150 refers to today's numbers, whereas 100% was the 10 years ago. That means the 828 is what represents today. And what we don't know is the 10 years ago, and I'll call that T for 10 years ago. Now notice that I chose 828 on the top because that refers to, that's partnered with 150% part compared to the original amount, which was the 100%. So if I use cross multiplication again, and I find out that my enrollment 10 years ago is 552 students. So just as a recap, a couple of really important formulas. The first one is this one, P over 100, which is your percent, is equal to part over whole. Also is this concept of new over old is equal to my original new over the original. So I can use that concept as well when comparing, when I know what the top or the numerator and the denominator represent. It takes a little bit of time to look through the question and see what does the numerator in fact represent, what does the denominator represent, and then build your fractions and your ratios and then your proportions according to those rules that you're setting up, and then you can solve it using cross multiplication. So hopefully you understood this lesson, and we'll do some more practice problems in class. You can do that one practice problem at the bottom of the page about the argon gas, and we'll give you the answers in class too. We'll take a look at that as a group.